Chapter 1. The Tale and the Joke. The Cryon Spire station breathed with life. Its vast glass arteries shimmered against a backdrop of stars, carrying streams of beings from across half a galaxy. Elias Veyra walked with a human trade delegation through the Grand Promenade, his boots clicking on the alloy floor that thrummed faintly with the pulse of fusion reactors buried deep within the station's heart. Neon glyphs scrolled across the curved walls, advertising alien delicacies and Starship upgrades, their light washing the crowd in a kaleidoscope of shifting color. The air smelled faintly of ozone and a spice Elias couldn't name, a tang that caught in his throat. Beside him strode Sira Veyra, a Theran officer whose presence drew the eyes of every passerby. Her people, sleek, feline, towering, moved with liquid grace. Her uniform's deep blue fabric clung to her frame, ceremonial silver cords gleaming across her shoulders, and from beneath the folds of her tunic swayed her tail, long, furred, and elegant, moving with unconscious balance. Elias had been trying not to stare. The delegation had stopped before a crystalline fountain, where alien dignitaries exchanged ritual greetings. Serena's tail flicked once, brushing against his leg. Reflex more than thought drove his mouth. Careful with that thing, Elias muttered under his breath, lips quirking. Someone might trip and fall in love with it. He hadn't realized how loud his voice carried until the conversation around them stalled. The alien dignitaries froze. A Xyrillian merchant's 6 eyes blinked in slow horror. A Korn diplomat stiffened, its gill plates flaring. Serena turned her head toward Elias, and her golden eyes widened with shock that quickly hardened into something sharper. Her tail stilled. "Repeat what you said," she whispered. "Not a request, an order." Elias's grin faltered. He raised his palm slightly, trying to brush it off. "It was a joke. Just a—" Her voice sliced through him. "You made light of my tail." The Theran guards of the fountain shifted, their claws clicking against their scabbards. A hush spread outward, carried on the whispers of alien tongues. Elias felt the burn of every gaze on him, the heat of neon light suddenly harsh against his skin. "I didn't mean—" "You compared it to fection." Serena's words trembled, though her posture remained rigid, a soldier's stance. "Among my people, to speak of one's tail in such terms is no jest. It is intimacy. It is claim." Elias blinked. The joke, harmless by human standards, had landed like a declaration of possession in Theran culture. He had not merely embarrassed her, he had marked her. His stomach tightened. He wanted to laugh it off, to apologize, but the weight of silence pressed down like artificial gravity turned too high. Around them, neon-lit eyes and alien voices murmured. He saw in their stares not curiosity, but judgment. Serena stepped closer, so close he caught the faint musk of her pupils mingled with sterile ozone. Her voice was low, dangerous, yet her eyes carried something more complicated. Hurt, anger, perhaps even fear. "You have spoken what cannot be unsaid," she told him. Elias's throat worked. "Serena, I didn't know. Where I come from, a joke's just— among humans, perhaps." Her tail flicked once, sharp as a blade unsheathed. "Among Therans, such words bind blood and honor. You will answer for this." The fountain's crystalline flow seemed louder in the silence that followed. Elias's mind raced, but instinct kept him from retreating. Instead, he straightened, forcing his voice steady though his heart hammered with dread. "Then tell me," he said, "what does answering look like in your world?" Her golden eyes locked on his, and for the first time, Elias glimpsed the storm he had stumbled into, and around them, the Cryon Spire watched. Chapter 2. Duel of Honor. The amphitheater was carved into the very spine of the Cryon Spire, a place where disputes older than recorded history found their resolution. The chamber's vaulted ceilings shimmered with projected sky, Alien constellations wheeling slowly overhead, while banners of rival houses unfurled in holographic brilliance. Thousands of eyes, some gold, some multifaceted, some glowing with artificial light, watched from the tiered seats. The air was thick with a cocktail of scents, burning oils, hot metal, and the faint musk of 100 species. At the center of the arena stood Elias Veyra. He could feel the weight of it, the arena, the crowd, the silence heavy as a pressure suit. His breath echoed too loudly inside his own ears, his heart thumping in time with the vibration of the deck beneath his boots. The amphitheater floor thrummed with the resonance of power lines that fed the force fields and the ceremonial lights. Opposite him, Sira Veyra stepped forward, resplendent in her officer's uniform. Her voice carried with amplified clarity, rich and unwavering. By the laws of my people, insult against the body is insult against the soul. Her tail flicked once in Elias's direction, a gesture sharp as a blade, has spoken words that cannot be withdrawn. By right of challenge, he must stand or yield his honor to exile. The audience erupted, growls, clicks, whistles, and even laughter from those who thought the outcome obvious. A human against theory and tradition? It was already a farce. Elias clenched his fists at his sides, sweat prickling his skin. He leaned toward the human trade delegate beside him, whispering, "Tell me she's bluffing." But the man's pale face said everything. "She isn't. It's law." Elias exhaled sharply, lifting his gaze toward Sira. She looked back with that same burning intensity as before. Yet beneath the fire there was hesitation. Her ears twitched, betraying the faintest flicker of conflict. "Your choices are simple," she said, her words carrying for all to hear. "Face combat or take exile. Beyond the Empire's borders lie the dead regions, uncharted void. Survival there is improbable." The crowd roared approval at the cruelty of the options. Elias's pulse hammered. Every instinct screamed at him to take the safer route, to step back, to let this alien pageantry swallow him whole. But something inside, the same stubborn streak that once had him soldering a plasma coil with bare hands when the safety gloves failed, rose to the surface. He squared his shoulders. "Exile sounds like a long, slow death," he said, his voice echoing. "So, guess I'll fight." The amphitheater hissed like a living thing. Shock, laughter, derision. The alien dignitaries traded glances, their expressions ranging from disbelief to delight. A Xyrillian hissed through its gills, muttering in its own tongue, while a Corn diplomat smirked with mandible clicks like snapping bones. Sira's ears tilted back, her tail swaying slowly, deliberately. For a heartbeat her golden eyes softened, an emotion Elias couldn't quite place, before the mask of the officer slipped back in place. "Then the right proceeds," she declared. The ground beneath Elias shifted, retracting in smooth mechanical plates to reveal a circular combat chamber sunk into the arena floor. Pale light spilled across the gleaming surface, broken only by the shimmer of containment field that hummed like a living thing. As the audience's roar rose to a crescendo, Elias whispered under his breath, "What the hell did I just sign up for?" Chapter 3. Human Stubbornness. The lower decks of Cryon Spire were nothing like the gilded amphitheater above. Here, the corridors sweated condensation. Pipes hissed steam, and the faint vibration of the station's engine set the metal underfoot thrumming like the chords of a massive instrument. It smelled of oil, overheated wiring, and the sharp tang of recycled air. Elias Veyra wiped sweat from his brow with the back of his hand, smearing grease across his cheek without noticing. In front of him lay a battered exosuit, obsolete, rust pitting its one silver plating, hydraulics leaking fluid in lazy drops. It looked less like armor and more like a coffin with a power supply. "Perfect," he muttered. "Death by scrap metal. At least it'll be original." He pulled a cracked visor down and set to work, sparks spitting as his plasma torch screamed. Around him, a small crowd had gathered, dockhands, curious aliens, even a few Theron soldiers who came only to sneer. "You'll never lift your arm in that." A tall reptilian snorted, its scales glittering under the flickering lights. "It was obsolete before your species left Earth's moon." Elias ignored him, tightening a jury-rigged actuator with his bare hands until his knuckles whitened. What they didn't understand, what no one seemed to understand, was that humans thrived in desperation. Give them rust and duct tape, and they'd build something that flew. Give them impossible odds, and they'd find the cracks in the armor. He tested the suit's servos. The right arm whined, then locked stiff. "Fine," he growled, wrenching out the control rod and replacing it with a bent strut scavenged from a cargo lifter. "Not elegant, but it'll move." From the shadowed edge of the chamber, Serena watched. She had not been seen entering. Her uniform blending with the half-light, her tail coiled low, a sign of tension, though her face was composed. She had expected him to despair, perhaps even to run. Instead, here he was, sweating, bleeding, cursing his guttural human tongue, refusing to surrender. Her second-in-command stepped beside her. "It is pointless, Commander. He will die tomorrow. Humans have no discipline." "No!" "Watch closely," Serena interrupted softly. "Discipline is not their strength. Adaptability is." On the floor, Elias climbed into the half-fixed exosuit. It hissed and groaned like an old war beast waking from slumber. He stumbled at first, then steadied, grinning through cracked lips. "Not pretty," he panted, "but it'll do the job." The aliens in the crowd jeered. Elias raised a grease-smeared middle finger, a gesture none of them understood, but which carried all the human defiance in the galaxy. Serena's ears flicked. Against her will, something inside her stirred, a faint ember of respect, tinged with something far more dangerous. The human was not strong. He was not fast, but where others would yield, he stood and fought with nothing but stubborn fire, and that, Serena thought, made him more dangerous than any warrior she had ever known. Chapter 4, Blades in Zero-G. The combat chamber bloomed open like the iris of some great mechanical eye. Panels retracted with a hiss, revealing a hollow sphere of polished alloy, its inner walls studded with floating platforms and glowing nets of plasma light. The chamber rotated slowly, a soft centrifugal hum, replaced by the stomach-dropping realization that gravity had been cut. The audience howled from beyond containment field. Thousands of alien voices reverberated, some guttural, some high-pitched, a tide of sound that rattled Elias's ribs. Inside the sealed airlock, Elias tugged on his repaired exosuit. The plates groaned, hydraulics coughed, but the patch systems flickered to life, glowing faint blue along his limbs. He flexed his hand, the servos stuttering but obeying. His mouth was dry as sand. "All right," he whispered. "Just don't die in the first 30 seconds." The gate ahead irised open. His opponent drifted forward, a Theron duelist in gleaming combat armor, tail lashing for balance. The figure carried twin plasma blades, their edges glowing a furious white, leaving trails in the thin air like scars of light. The alien's helmet visor reflected Elias in miniature, small, ungainly, fragile. The duel began with no signal, only the roar of the crowd. The Theron lunged, tail whipping for momentum. Elias twisted awkwardly, shoving off a floating platform. The sudden acceleration sent him spinning, stars and plasma nets wheeling. He slammed into a wall, the exosuit servos screeching. Sparks burst across his visor. The audience laughed, but Elias gritted his teeth and kicked off again, aiming himself deliberately toward a cluster of platforms. His movements were ugly, desperate, nothing like the graceful arcs of his opponent, but his eyes burned with focus. He slammed into the edge of a platform, one hand grabbing the railing, and yanked himself steady. "Not a dance," he muttered. "It's physics." The Theran warrior slashed, plasma blades cutting through the platform's edge. Elias jerked free just as it broke apart, shards tumbling away in slow arcs. He shoved himself backward, using the fragments as cover. His opponent twisted easily around them, tail propelling, blades poised to strike. Elias snapped his wrist controls, triggering the jury-rigged actuator. The exosuit's arm locked, but he forced it through, using the stiffness to swing a loose strut like a club. The blow wasn't elegant. It was desperate. It caught the Theran across the shoulder, spinning the duelist sideways. The crowd gasped. Elias's lungs burned, sweat stinging his eyes inside the helmet. He forced himself forward, pushing off a plasma net. The heat licked at his suit, alarms blaring, but he angled the rebound perfectly. His patch stabilizer coughed to life for half a second, enough to correct his spin. He barreled into the Theran, both of them tumbling. The warrior's plasma blade hissed past his visor, a white-hot streak that seared his cheek shield. Elias locked his arm around the alien's waist, snarling, "If I'm going down, you're coming with me." They collided with a floating strut, bouncing hard. The Theran's blade skidded away, spinning into the void. Elias clung on, battered, panting, his suit sparking. His opponent thrashed with alien grace, tail whipping, but Elias's grip was iron. Through the haze, he caught movement beyond containment field. Serenia stood at the observation deck, her golden eyes locked on him. For the briefest instant, she lifted her hand, 2 fingers tapping against her wrist, an old Theran signal of timing. Elias's brain clicked. He released at the exact moment his opponent twisted, letting the duelist's momentum hurl him into a plasma net. The containment energy flared, swallowing the warrior in a blinding crackle. The chamber fell silent. Elias drifted, barely conscious, sparks trailing from his failing suit. He was alive. Against every expectation, he was still alive. The crowd erupted, some in outrage, some in awe. And Serenia, her expression unreadable, whispered into the silence only he seemed to feel. Human stubbornness. Chapter 5, Between Duty and Desire. The roar of the amphitheater still rattled the Cryon Spire hours after the duel had ended. The alien crowd had not quieted easily. Shrieks of betrayal, chants for blood, the hiss of weapons drawn at the mere suggestion that a human had bested one of their own. It had taken an entire squadron of Theran guards to force order. The hiss of plasma rifles raised in warning, scattering the angriest voices. Now, in the council chamber, the storm had only shifted. The hall was vast, its walls of polished obsidian rising like the inside of a cathedral, lit by holographic star maps that hovered above the central dais. Banners of alien nations flickered in shifting neon above the delegates' heads. The air was heavy with incense smoke, a ritual meant to purify the chamber, though to Elias it just made his throat itch. He stood alone at the foot of the dais, his patched exosuit in ruin, the plating scorched and sparking. His knuckles were bloodied, his breathing ragged, but his eyes burned with the same fire that had carried him through the duel. Around him, alien dignitaries hissed, growled, or clicked mandibles in disgust. "This is a mockery," one of them spat in a voice like crushed glass. "A human? A primitive? You insult the right itself." "He should have died," barked another, scales bristling as it leaned forward. "No human can outlast a Theran warrior. You rigged this." Elias almost laughed. "Trust me," he rasped. "If it were rigged, I wouldn't be limping." The dignitaries erupted again, outrage rolling like thunder through chamber. Above them all, Serenia Katiechwara rose from her seat, her silhouette cut against the star maps, tail swaying in measured arcs, her voice amplified so that silence fell instantly. "Enough." The word cracked like steel. She looked down at Elias, her golden eyes sharp but strangely conflicted. The right is not only strength, it is spirit, it is endurance. He did not win by grace or skill, but by will, and in that he is proven worthy. Gasps rippled through the chamber. Some of the delegates shouted again, their voices rising into a storm. You twist our law, Commander Sira. You dishonor your people. But Serena's shoulders remained square, her chin high. I uphold the law. The right does not say how one must endure, only that one must not fall. She let her words hang, cutting through the incense haze. He did not fall. Elias swallowed hard. She had saved him, again, but the cost was written in every flick of alien tails, every glare that burned into her back. Later, in the quiet shadow of the observation deck, Serena found him alone. The viewport stretched wide, revealing the stars beyond, cold and endless, dotted with alien constellations Elias had never named. The hum of the spire's engines vibrated through the floor, a deep and steady heartbeat. You shouldn't have defended me, Elias said quietly, his reflection pale in the glass. Serena's voice was softer here, stripped of command. If I hadn't, they would have torn you apart where you stood. He turned to her, studying her face, the fine angles, the way her ears tilted ever so slightly back, betraying tension. And now they'll tear you apart instead. Her golden eyes met his. For a long moment, neither spoke. Then her voice trembled, just faintly, betraying the emotion she fought to hide. When you fought, she said, when you clung to victory with nothing but broken steel and will, I saw something I did not expect. Elias arched a brow. What? Stupidity? Her lips twitched. Almost a smile, though her tale betrayed her turmoil with its restless sway. No, I saw why your kind survives. Why? Against all reason, you endure. The silence stretched between them, charged, fragile. You put me in this mess, Elias muttered, but his voice had softened. And I may have damned myself for it, Serena replied. Her hand hovered near his arm, close enough that he felt the warmth, but not daring to touch. But the moment you stood back up, when no sane being would, I could not turn away. The engines hummed, stars blazed, and between them hung a truth neither wanted to say aloud, yet both felt, duty and desire, and a choice neither could avoid for long. Chapter 6. The Deadly Choice. The High Council chamber was carved from obsidian and lit by alien starlight piped through crystalline conduits. Above, a vast dome projected the spiral arms of the galaxy, as if the weight of eternity itself looked down on the accused. Elias Veyra stood at the center, stripped of his battered exosuit, clothed only in a plain utility jumpsuit streaked with grease and dried blood. Around him, rows of alien dignitaries glared with unmasked hatred. The air buzzed with translation drones, each word echoing in a dozen tongues. The council speaker, an ancient Theron with fur gone silver, leaned forward. The right was not meant for off-world vermin. A human does not claim honor by clinging like a parasite. His tail lashed once, sharp as a whip. To preserve tradition, he must die. His blood will cleanse his shame. A murmur of approval rippled through the chamber. Serena Katihr stood at the dais, her uniform crisp but her expression unreadable. Only her ears, angled back ever so slightly, betrayed the storm beneath. She inhaled, squared her shoulders, and spoke with a clarity that rang against the chamber walls. There is another way. The council fell into silence. Serena's golden eyes swept the assembly. Our law allows for substitution. If I renounce my station, if I surrender my lineage, the dishonor is mine to carry. His life is spared. The hall erupted. Voices shouted in outrage, Tails thrashed, claws clicked. Treason. Betrayal. She would throw away her bloodline for a human? Elias stared at her, stunned. His throat worked, but no sound came. The council speaker's eyes narrowed. Do you mean this, daughter of Sabotage? You would fall into exile, stripped of name and rank for him? Serenia's jaw tightened. She did not look away. I would. The chamber shook with fury. Guards surged forward, but the speaker raised a hand, silencing them. His gaze turned to Elias, piercing. And you, human, do you accept this? That your life is bought with a ruin? The question landed like a blade in Elias's chest. His mind raced. Images of Earth's cracked deserts, the long corridors of colony ships, the laughter of crew who believed humans were too stubborn to die. He looked at Serena, this proud, fierce warrior who had gone from execution to protector, and he saw what she was about to sacrifice. Slowly, Elias shook his head. No. Gasps echoed across the chamber. Serena's ears flicked, eyes widening in disbelief. No. Elias said louder, his voice carrying over the storm. I won't let her throw her life away from me. If someone has to pay, let it be me. He drew himself up, standing straighter than he felt, his voice steady though his stomach knotted with fear. If my blood cleanses your shame, then take it. But don't you dare call me weak. Don't you dare say humans don't endure. The chamber froze. Even the translation drone seemed hesitant to echo the words. For a long heartbeat, Serena stared at him, her throat working. Then she stepped forward, placing herself between Elias and the council, her tail coiled protectively around his leg, a gesture unmistakable in its meaning. If he dies, she said, her voice trembling but fierce, then I go with him. You cannot stop that. You may strip my name, but you cannot strip my choice. The council roared again, but it was too late. The declaration was made, the gesture undeniable. Moments later, Elias and Serena stood side by side on the observation deck. The verdict delivered. Exile. The galaxy stretched before them, cold and endless, stars burning like distant fires. The hum of the Spire's engines thrummed beneath their feet, carrying them away from the empire Serena had once called home. Elias glanced at her. You didn't have to do this. Serena's golden eyes softened, her tail brushing against his hand. Neither did you. But you did. That is why I chose. Their hands met on the glass, fingers and claws interlacing, two silhouettes framed by the stars. Behind them, the spire faded into the dark. Ahead lay exile, danger, and uncertainty. But together, bound by defiance, they stepped into the unknown. The starship drifted free of the Cryon Spire's orbit, its engines humming a low, steady rhythm that carried through the decks like the pulse of a living creature. Beyond the viewport stretched a canvas of alien constellations, each star burning with cold promise. Far below, the neon lattice of the spire glittered, an empire of law and tradition they could never return to. Elias stood with one hand pressed to the glass, the other resting at his side, still bruised and raw from the duel. Beside him, Serena's reflection shimmered in the viewport, her tail coiled loosely around her own ankles, a gesture of vulnerability no Theran warrior would ever show. They'll call us traitors, Elias said quietly. They already do, Serena replied. Her golden eyes turned toward him, soft where once they had been sharpened by duty. After a long silence, she reached out, her clawed hand covering his scarred one on the glass. But they will also remember you, the human who would not fall. He turned to her, and for the first time since this began, he allowed himself a small, unguarded smile. I didn't win because I was stronger. I won because I refused to give up. That's all humanity ever has. Serena's breath trembled, her voice breaking into a whisper. And that's why I chose you. Their foreheads touched lightly, framed by the endless sprawl of the galaxy. The ship shuddered as it leapt into faster-than-light, stars smearing into streams of silver. In that fragile, infinite moment, exile no longer felt like loss. It felt like freedom.